Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Glass. I represent a group called Texas Constitutional Enforcement. And one of the four areas we're focusing on in this Texas legislative session, 88th session in 2023, is border security. And the reason why we focus there is because probably the biggest issues related to get right this time around are the questions relating to the constitutions and their roles in between the federal government and the state government. And we think we have something to bring to that table, and I think we already have. I want to cover fairly broadly the border security related bills that are up in this session. But I'm going to focus in on what I think is the most important. I think the first way to kind of dive into border security is to look at the Republican Party of Texas legislative priority on border security. It was the priority that got the second most number of votes from the delegates at the state convention out of 15 priorities. It's in the top 8, so it's number 2, right behind election integrity. So evidently, it's at least the rank and file of the Republican Party of Texas, and I think the people of Texas think of border security as top priority. I will tell you from my personal experience when I ran for office, when I block walked a year ago, when I asked open-ended questions about what's the most important issue to you, the number one issue that was raised by people spontaneously was border security. So it's a big deal. And I think that, of course, the reasons for that are many. I could go down the litany of all the reasons and the numbers, but I don't think I want to do much of that. Of course, one number that's we've been using is in 2022 alone, 107,000 people, Americans, died of fentanyl poisoning. I don't use the word overdose because the vast majority of those people took something that they thought was something else, and it had been deliberately laced with poison, fentanyl, so that they took the pill and took fentanyl for the first time. It killed them. That is not a business model. That is something that is a deliberate attack. This fentanyl is made in Mexico, and it's being made by precursors delivered by China and the CCP. So I can't, when you think about 107,000 people dying in America, that's the total number of military men we lost in Vietnam and Korea. That is like 35 World Trade Centers in 2022 that occur in terms of deaths that occurred. That has to be considered an attack on America. It has to be considered an attack on Texas and the people of Texas, and that it's killing lots of us. And of course, that's just one of the many things that are happening. We've got the sex trafficking, we've got the human trafficking, we've got the fact that sleeper cells are coming in from every nation in the world across this unsecured border. So there's incredibly numbers of good reasons to raise this up to the highest priority that it is. So let's go back to what the Republican Party said they wanted to do in their the priority. There were 3 sentences and 3 concepts associated with that. The second sentence is the one that I personally consider to be the most important and is playing out in this legislature, and that is the sentence that said, "We call upon the governor to declare an invasion and then do everything in his power to stop it." The third sentence is, I think, probably the second most, was it called for an interstate compacts between Texas and other states to try to get as many resources as we can headed our direction to help us in this invasion. And then the first sentence, which is important too, but evidently the legislature didn't think so, is what I call the stop the magnet sentence. The sentence said, stop Texas taxpayer services to illegal aliens. We shopped a bill. We got probably the first bill ever, comprehensive bill to that in that capacity started. And when I say we, I was working with Kelly Perry, who is the head of the Republican Party of Texas Border Security Committee, Legislative Priority Committee. She's on SREC. She lives in Brackettville, right there on the border, and lives it every day. But anyway, she and I worked the legislature. We found a staff that was willing to go ask for a bill to be crafted on stopping the magnet and do a comprehensive prohibition of giving taxpayer services in Texas to illegals. We got it back the day before a filing deadline, and we just couldn't find any takers at that late date. We do have one bill, two bills filed by Ellen Troxclair, who does small pieces of that. One of them is, let's see, what bill number is that? One of them is HB 2240. And that stops Texas Housing Department from giving out subsidies to illegals. And the other is HB 2241, which stops Texas from paying for the legal representation for illegals. So that's all we got for this session on that first sentence of the priority. So let me go ahead and plunge into the second sentence, which is the big news for this session, and that is the declaration of invasion and taking effective action, which I think we can put down into one word: repel. Repel at the border, especially repel in between the ports of entry. The idea is if you're going to get into Texas, you're not going to do it in between a port of entry. You're going to have to come to a port of entry where, for now, the federal government will control. And I think if we get that under control and we start doing our fentanyl inspections after they come through the port of entry better, we can, and we don't let anything come across the border, we can make a major dent in this. One other thing that's part of this legislative priority, the idea of legislative or declaration of invasion and the repelling is, to a large extent, this is to a certain extent a PR game. You know, Trump was successful to a large extent because the word went out: don't even try. Don't even try to come into the United States. You're not going to make it. And so people didn't. Well, what changed when Biden got in is he said, come on. And I suspect that through the charities that he's giving to, I don't know this for a fact, with federal tax dollars too, that those charities are assisting people making it through Mexico and getting them to the border so that they can be delivered to the tender mercies of the cartels. But anyway, so the big deal is if we can make it where the news goes out again that you shouldn't even try in Texas. If you want to make it into the United States under Biden, you're going to have to go to another state. You're not going to make it through Texas. If that word gets out because of the action we take here in Texas, a whole bunch of the problems we are experiencing directly on the front line of this battle are going to go away. And that's where a lot of the firepower for this legislation, for this session, is focused. Note that the priority said governor will declare an invasion. The party platform says the legislature shall declare an invasion. And if you know anything about the Texas Constitution or just the structure of both constitutions in general, the United States and the Texas Constitution, the policy-making body of a government is the legislature. Yeah, it's fine by us if the governor declares an invasion and acts upon it. We want him to do that. But if the governor either doesn't do it all the way, or we're not sure that he's done it the right way, or even if he's done it, the proper thing to do is to get the legislature to declare an invasion. If the legislature, the representatives of the people under our constitutions, say that we want this, then we're in really good shape. And so then you have to ask the question, okay, well, why are we talking about declaration invasion? Why don't we just take care of business? And that gets to us to where we are sitting right now vis-a-vis the federal government and what the Supreme Court has said about what Texas can independently do and what they can't. Back under the Obama administration, the immigration problems were similar to what we're facing now, not to the degree. But Obama was not enforcing immigration laws very vigorously. And the people of Arizona went to their representatives and they said, hey, we want to be protected. The way we want to do it is we want to duplicate immigration law in Arizona law and have our local law enforcement enforce the very same rules and laws that the feds are supposed to be implementing but are not. And so they did that. That created a furor. That raised the question about is the law enforcement of Arizona going to be profiling people? Are they going to be catching American citizens in the net as they round people up and deport them? All that sort of thing. And that created a cry, and a bunch of liberal groups took Arizona to the federal court and eventually worked its way up to the Supreme Court in a case called United States v. Arizona. It's an interesting case. The bottom line is they said the federal government can preempt state action when it comes to immigration law. I'm not sure I agree with that. The Attorney General said earlier in this session to the Border Security Committee that he disagrees with that reasoning. I think he's right. I think there should not be a preemption by the federal government. You had to do several inferences to be able to get to the idea that the federal government is even involved in immigration, because there's no explicit delegation of power in that regard. But so be it. That's the state we're in right now. The federal government, through the judiciary, said that their law is what matters and their enforcement was not matters. And we in the states can't enforce the law, the immigration law, when the federal government doesn't, which is a really, really sad situation. And what we've been doing is trying to figure out, okay, what can Texas do? The governor's been trying to figure that out. Law enforcement is asking themselves the question, are the feds going to come on down on me? Texas local law enforcement have been asking, is the feds going to come down on me for just protecting the people of Texas and enforcing Texas state law? And so there's been real questions about that. And essentially what we need to do is bypass United States v. Arizona. The Attorney General said he'd like to challenge it and overturn it. But the idea of declaration of invasion is based on an alternative idea. There is another part of the Constitution. It's called Article 1, Section 10, which by and large is this place where the states agreed when they entered the Union what they were prohibited from doing. Most of the stuff has to do with keeping an army, waging war, that sort of stuff. And even interstate compacts you can't do without congressional approval. So, but at the very end of Article 1, Section 10, there's a little unless a word. And following unless, it says unless actually invaded or in such imminent dangers as the circumstances require, or something like that. It's imminent danger and in actual invasion are the terms in the Constitution. That unless clause, that little last sentence, which they sometimes say is Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, it's even the last sentence of Clause 3. That sentence is a reservation of power to the states before the 10th Amendment ever got created. 10th Amendment came along and said, later on, said if the states aren't prohibited from doing it, and the federal government is not delegated to do it, then the states have the power to do it, and the people of the states have the power to do that. So the cool thing about this unless clause is it clearly it is a place where the states have what the lawyers call plenary power. It is something that is completely within the control of the Texas and our representatives, the people of Texas and our representatives. And it should not have any second guessing by the federal government at all. It's designed so that the states can protect their people from this very type situation. In the Virginia ratifying convention, people were talking about this unless clause, actual invasion, and what it meant. And Madison, the guy that everybody considers to be the father of the United States Constitution and author of the Federalist Papers, at the Virginia ratifying convention said, "Oh yeah, this means if like a pirates invade or occupy." Or just come on a raid and pillage, that the states can immediately react to protect their citizens. So that's a very important thing, because now let's go ahead and get to the legislation that we've had introduced. Lois Kokhorst, State Senator Lois Kokhorst, who happens to be my senator in SD 18, has introduced SCR 23. SCR stands for Senate Concurrent Resolution. Concurrent resolution is the way both chambers of the legislature can make a declaration of what they think. Usually it's a statement. It's not it doesn't create law. But in this kind of situation where you're trying to get the Constitution right and the world needs to know what you're doing, this is very much, there's a whole bunch of reasons why you want to make a declaration through a concurrent resolution this way. And that's what Senator Kokhorst has done. And the beautiful thing about her concurrent resolution is that it goes precisely to this reservation of power in Article 1, Section 10. And the other thing is it precisely limits what the invasion is to, she calls it a cartel invasion. And that's very important for multiple reasons. One, constitutionally, it clearly delineates this declaration and what we are going to do as a part of responding to this invasion as something different than immigration. It takes us completely out of United States v. Arizona immigration land and puts us into an unprecedented situation where the state acts independently to protect its people under Article 1, Section 10. When I say unprecedented, the real unprecedented part of this is, to a certain extent, the federal government has never refused to protect the people of a state. And the second thing is, no one's ever challenged the authority of a state to do this in federal court. So we have no Supreme Court precedent, which is the way the lawyers like to think about this. But if you have no precedent on something, what you have to do is original intent analysis of the thing, and that's what this legislature is now doing under the guidance of Lois Kokhorst, and that's what we are advocating that you do as well. By the way, I got a lot of these good ideas from Center for Renewing America. Ken Cuccinelli is kind of the head guy. He was with the Trump administration. Russell Vogt, who runs the organization. And Texan Wade Miller is now on staff for them in Virginia. And so they've been doing yeoman's work outlining these ideas about how we can constitutionally act independently and protect the people of Texas here in Texas. So she has done that. That has already had a hearing in the Border Security Committee in the state Senate. That happened Thursday. We're recording this on March 26th. That hearing occurred on Thursday, March 23rd. It was a wonderful hearing. And all five of the senators, both the two border Democrats who are Blanco and Hinojosa, and in the implied, we didn't hear from Phil King because he had to be a lot of other places, but it's clear that Chair Birdwell of the Border Security Committee and Pete Flores, who's the other Republican on the committee, all are in favor, and I have no doubt that Phil King will vote. So we're going to get a 5-0 vote probably this week on that SCR. And by the way, SCRs only require a majority. They don't require 2/3 to be an official statement of the people of Texas. One of the things I told the committee when I testified in favor of it was that this The reason why a declaration is so important is that it is the opening argument in a legal statement when you get dragged into federal court with people who don't like what Texas is doing, and saying that we can't do that under the Constitution. And this is the argument, yes, we can, and here's the reasons why. We've read our Constitution. One of the things I said to the committee was that, we are not a unitary dictatorship where the federal government runs everything in this nation. We are a federated republic where the Constitution defines the roles of the states and the federal government, and we each have a role to play. That's another balance of power that we have to protect the people of Texas and the United States. And the balance written right there in the Constitution says Texas can protect its own citizens when we are in imminent danger. And people said at the hearing, and I've said it too, based on feedback from members of my group, this is not imminent danger we're facing. It's not just about to happen. It's clear and present danger that Texans are facing from this awful cartel, evil, demonic invasion and assault upon Texans. So that's the big news in the Senate. Okay, on the other side, in the House, we have the leadership of Matt Schaefer, State Rep Matt Schaefer out of Tyler. He has filed a bill, and as he was working his bill, which got filed fairly late, he went and worked behind the scenes with the Speaker of the House, Dave Phelan, and with the governor to craft legislation that's consistent with what we're talking about here, and installs the resources necessary to actually repel at the border, and requires the resources that we're going to create to repel at the border. His bill also has a declaration, not of invasion, but of imminent danger, which either one will do to get the job done here. So anyway, his bill creates a new border protection unit, which will take up the slack from the very stretched thin Texas National Guard, who are using part-time guys pulled away from their jobs and their families from all over Texas to defend us. And it's going to take the pressure off the DPS. Once again, we're pulling DPS officers away from their home bases and patrolling and providing law enforcement in the interior of Texas, and putting pressure on them away from their families, doing long tours of duty with Operation Lone Star. And what the Border Protection Unit is designed to do is get people who will be dedicated to that in Texas, have its own command structure. Right now, it reports directly to the governor as the bill is currently constituted. So it has a more limited declaration than Lois Cokhorst. It has a Border Protection Unit, and it says we need to repel them at the border. Notice that nowhere in the language of Lois Cokhorst's bill, nor of Matt Schaefer's bill, is the word remove. And there's strategy in that. First off, if you talk about removal, you start getting yourself back into, why are you removing them? Aren't you actually enforcing immigration laws here? And that cuts against your argument that Texas can take independent action under current Supreme Court law. So this has been very carefully crafted to give us the best shot at prevailing when we get challenged in the Supreme Court. And on top of that, it's more politically sellable to large portions of people in Texas, many of whom live on the border and who don't want to be profiled, who don't want to be rounded up with being presumed to be illegal when they are not. That is a red flag. The removal piece is a big red flag for a lot of people. We're going to get a lot more support by just talking about repelling at the border than removing. And that's a key part of the way Matt Schaefer is playing the game, as well as Lois Cokhorst. Matt is under a lot of pressure to change the wording on a lot of different issues. One issue that I agree with that some people are urging him to do is that we need. He's got something that says subject to federal law in there, and we want to make sure that we're not saying we're trying to enforce or to give any hint that we're trying to enforce federal immigration law in there. So I think it's wise counsel to take out references to subject to federal law in his bill language. And he's getting a lot more feedback on this than that. A lot of different angles. The left, by the way, I heard it on the morning show in Houston, Fox 26. What's your point? They are already saying, because Matt says that for a lot of support positions, citizens can volunteer to be part of the Border Protection Unit, but they can't get arrest powers until they've had training and become peace officers. Some of the left has seized on this. Oh, this is just the white racists trying to get the power of government to bash on poor brown people type of rhetoric, which is not true. They've mischaracterized what the bill is, but that's the take that the left now is trying to use to kind of go back against Matt Schaefer's bill. From my perspective, I want both Lois Kolkhorst's official declaration, and I want Matt Schaefer's more rigorous bill that tells us how to do this. I want to say, I want to talk a little bit more about the politics of this, and that is one of the things when I went to see the Lieutenant Governor's staff after he had put forward his 30 priorities, I noticed, I pointed out to his border security staffer that I didn't see anything about border security on those 30 priorities. And she said, well, there's two things on there. There's the regular budget and a supplementary budget, and we plan to devote lots of money to border security this time around. And my response to that was, okay, I hear that, and I agree. I know that Lieutenant Governor Patrick has always been cared about protecting the people of Texas at the border. And so I suspect that he does, and I know that he's going to do money. But let me just say this. Money using the same failed tactics we've already done is the definition of an insanity. It's repeating the same thing and just throwing more money at with the same failed tactics. It's not going to get the job done. We must change how those resources that we're deploying at the border are being implemented. The sad truth is, although I think the DPS is capturing lots of human traffickers and trespass and arresting them, but that most of what we're doing is supplementing the Border Patrol and assisting the Border Patrol in capturing and then processing people who are then being paroled because they've violated federal law, but they're not being deported. They're being allowed, after processing, which a large amount of Border Patrol resources are being used for, they're being allowed a legal entry into the United States. And to the degree that Texas Guard and the DPS are funneling over that. I saw a report 375,000 people had been apprehended by our law enforcement in Guard over the last year. They were funneled to the Border Patrol, and the Border Patrol processed them and let them into the country. That is not the way you stop an invasion. The key point, by the way, I'm just talking about immigrants here. One of the key points that Lois Kolkhorst made in her layout, and it's so key to get this straight, it is the immigrants that are bearing, the people that are trying to get in here illegally are the ones they're being used as the pawns. They're being sucked dry of probably every dollar they have and more. They're being put into debt slavery by the cartels when they get over here, because most of them don't have all the money they need. They are being raped. They are being, a lot of them. In the last 2 days, we've seen reports of people being dying in containers. They are being sold into, the children and the women are being sold into sexual trafficking. To have a policy that delivers the people who want to get into our country, if legitimately for only to have a better life, and deliver them into the tender mercies of the cartel, is criminal, and it is something that our policy should not be doing. We need to make it very clear. Don't even try. Don't go to the cartels to make it across the border illegally. Yeah, I know that the cartels will probably still shut you down just to get to a port of entry. But don't be letting them take you across the border in Texas, because there's a whole bunch of bad is going to happen to you if you do. So, the point that Lois was making about the good-hearted people trying to make it across is that they are being used as a kind of cannon fodder. They are surging them across the border, while the real bad guys, the terrorists, the drug traffickers, and the people they want to traffic for sex trafficking, they're bringing them across, while the Border Patrol and Texas resources are being diverted to handle the surge of the people who come across and then report. And it allows a whole bunch of stuff that we don't know what's going on and can't control to happen. That is the dastardly design and tactics of the cartel, and that's what we've got to stop. And that's what we're going to focus on, not the immigration. We're not doing it for the immigration. We're doing it because we want to stop all the other stuff that's happening. We're still going to let the federal government be involved in the processing related to immigration. I will point out that recently the policy that the federal government has been using of paroling illegal immigrants into this country after they process them has been challenged in federal court, and a district court has said that's not a legal tactic. So we think if we can get them to go to the borders, the gates, the crossing points, and have the federal government do it, and we can get some good legal decisions, we actually can actually have immigration law enforced by our federal government, while we take care in Texas, take care of our border security and all the other ills, the fentanyl poisoning, et cetera, that's happening to us. Okay, so that was long-winded. Now let me go to the next, the third component of the legislative priority of the Republican Party of Texas in border, and that is interstate compacts. The whole idea of an interstate compact is to get people to come help you and give all hands on deck. This is not only a crisis for us, it's a crisis for the rest of the nation. And so the idea is, there's a lot of people. We had testimony from Kelly Perry at the border security deal that she's been has been involved in discussions with 14 states who say they're ready to do interstate compacts, or at least talk about doing interstate compacts if we will get our act together and start making that happen. One of the constitutional issues about having that is in Article 1, Section 10, before the unless, it says that you need to take care of, you need to get congressional approval for interstate compacts. But the unless implies, at least to my reading, the unless applies to that says if you're actually invaded, you don't have to get congressional approval. And of course, that makes sense. It's a lot of in the early days of the Republic, Congress wasn't in session all the time. It takes forever. The whole idea of the unless actually invaded and imminent danger is you need to take action quickly. Having to go get congressional approval or any kind of federal approval didn't make a lot of sense. So there's that. There was a question raised in the hearing. We had a hearing, by the way, on a bill by let's see who it was. Tan Parker. He filed a bill called it's SB 1403, which was heard in the Senate Border Security Committee too. Other people have filed interstate compacts. Senator Hall has done it in the Senate. Representative Springer has done it, and the chair of the Homeland Security and Public Safety Committee, where border bills will be heard, Ryan Guillen, has filed an interstate compact bill. All except Tan Parker's bill said that if we're going to do an interstate compact, and once we've done it, the governor shall submit that to Congress for approval. I had already sent them recommended changes to language, which I got the indication that all three were going to do, that would do a committee sub that would say, but if we're actually invaded or imminent danger, we're not going to go to Congress for approval. But what was interesting is Tan Parker's bill said, let's do an interstate compact, and he didn't say a thing about getting congressional approval, and it just implied he was going to do it. I wondered about that. I signed in favor of it. I wanted to hear what constitutional logic he had for that, and that I was answered, because he brought with him a senior staffer from the Attorney General who reviewed a long line of cases which I was not familiar with, having to do with when Congress has to get involved in the approval of an interstate compact and when not. It was the read of the Attorney General that this kind of interstate compact in all likelihood would not need congressional approval. So he thought doing an interstate compact without any reference to congressional approval at all was the proper thing in this. He said, if they want to come drag us in and create more precedent on this, let's do it. But he says he thought this was the right approach. So we have a bill in process, an interstate compact bill in process that does not request congressional approval, that probably will be voted out of the Senate Border Security Committee next week. We have yet to have any bills of these core immigration bills heard in the House yet, in Ryan Guillen's Homeland Security Committee. So that's pretty much it. Now, there's been lots of other bills filed, stuff about giving limited authority to Border Patrol agents to arrest people that they've already arrested for a federal crime, to also take them over to the state officials for violations of federal state crimes. That's an interesting one. Chair Birdwell has done that. We've had stuff to up the penalties on fentanyl, to declare it to be poisoning and make it a real crime. Senator Birdwell has a bill to make it a trespass if you come across the border and then set foot on private land that you've not even invited to set foot on, that is a state felony, which will assist the Border Patrol unit in their enforcement efforts in the repelling at the border. So, and there's lots of other kind of bills which I consider to be a little bit more stuff about training of people about law in regard to that sort of thing. Part of the Speaker Phelan's package is he has some other bills which would give legislative oversight to the Border Protection Unit. So there's a lot at play, but I think I've summarized the core of what's going on. From me, if we get nothing else, SCR 23 in both coming out of both chambers, and then HB 20 coming out of both chambers is the way forward, and of an interstate compact bill like SB 1403 from Senator Parker. That's what we want, and that's what we ought to be tracking. So I think that's my summary of what's going on in this 88th legislature of Texas in 2023 here on March 26th of 2023. And with that, I'll sign off. Thanks.